Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to the English Right Now podcast. In this episode, we're talking about Robin Hood. Was he real or was he not? And of course, during this lesson, you're going to be learning at least 10 pieces of vocabulary related to this subject. And joining me, of course, is my dear friend Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Roy. Great to be here again. Hi, everybody.
I was going to say welcome, and then I forgot to say welcome. Welcome again. It's lovely to see you. How are you today?
Very good, thank you. The sun is shining, and we've got a great subject to talk about, haven't we, today?
We do indeed. So, Robin Hood, what are your feelings? So, a lot of people say, was Robin Hood real? Was he not? There's a lot of kind of confusion over it. What would you say?
Hmm. I don't believe there was somebody called Robin Hood, a real person, but I imagine there are people, or have been people in the past who act a bit like Robin Hood, because of course Robin Hood, he was a kind of a heroic outlaw, wasn't he? He was a bad guy, well, a sort of almost like a criminal in a way, but he had good intentions.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I'm a little bit more that there may have been somebody, but it's interesting. We've already stated our opinion, and you used the word there. One of our key vocabulary we're going to talk about, which is outlaw. Now,
Hmm.
this was more commonly used in the past, and it's a person, basically a criminal, often who lives separately from other parts of society. So they're a little bit isolated away from society because they want to escape the law. So it's basically a criminal who lives outside the law, why it's called an outlaw.
Hmm.
We used it in the Wild West and things like that, but it's not as common these days. But one thing that's really interesting, if you go to the Cambridge Dictionary, the definition they give for outlaw is Robin Hood was an outlaw who lived in the forest and stole from the rich to give to the poor. So they've even used our main man, Robin Hood, as the example. But outlaw is basically a criminal who lives separately from society, but it's a bit old fashioned.
Yeah, that was his main mission, wasn't it? It was to steal from the rich to give to the poor. That's what the whole story is
Yeah.
about, Robin Hood.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, rob from the rich to give to the poor, and that possibly like it ties in with the name robbing, kind of this idea as well. But yeah, and it's a very socialist kind of thing. This narrative, this story, and it is a story, isn't it? I mean, it's not clear whether Robin was a real person or not. I mean, you said he's not. That you're done. But there's a lot of different stories, and they constantly change, don't they?
They do. There are many different versions, and I believe that the kind of the very original kind of story of Robin Hood goes back to something like the 15th century. So this story has been told again and again, and probably changed slightly over time. But as I said, the main moral of the story is to take from the rich to give to the poor to make everybody equal.
Yeah, and he was absolutely, and it's a fascinating story. I think it might have even been earlier than that, according to some things I've read. It's hard to know, but one thing for
Hmm.
sure is that he lived during the sort of medieval times, which medieval times is another piece of vocabulary, and it's related to the Middle Ages, and it's the period in kind of European history from around 600 AD to 1500 AD. So pretty big period of time. But it was in that time that Robin Hood is said to have lived, if he did indeed live.
And he was an archer, wasn't he? That was his
He
his skill.
was. This is another key piece of vocabulary as well. So an archer is a person who uses a bow and arrow for either sport or they use it as a weapon. And in the case of Robin Hood, he did. So let's talk more about this myth that we know. What do we know about Robin Hood?
Well, okay, so we've said he's an outlaw. So he wasn't he didn't follow the law. So yeah, he was a bit of a rebel, I guess.
Yep.
He hid out in a forest, Sherwood Forest, in a county called Nottinghamshire. And that does exist, doesn't it? The county and the
Yes.
forest.
Yes. Have you been?
Um, I haven't actually. Do you know? I've never been to Sherwood Forest. Should I go?
Really? You definitely
Yeah.
should. So well, I don't know if it's slap bang in the middle, exactly in the middle. Slap bang means exactly. It's kind of a slang phrase, isn't it? I don't know if it's exactly in the middle, but there is a huge kind of oak tree, a really old oak tree called the Major Oak, and
Hmm.
it is a beautiful tree. It's kind of propped up now with struck the sort of things to keep it from falling down. But it's a beautiful tree, and that's where he's said to have kind of lived and existed, and also where he's kind of said to some of his ambushes took place. Now, an ambush is another key piece of vocabulary we're talking about. That means to suddenly attack someone after hiding and waiting for them. So it's like a surprise attack after waiting for somebody. So he's said to have ambushed the rich, and then he would take their money to give to the poor. But he's said to have lived in Sherwood Forest, which is exactly a real place in Nottinghamshire. You've been to Nottingham, though.
Yes, yes, that's quite a historic city, isn't it, with a castle in it? Yeah.
Thank goodness. Yeah, Nottingham Castle. But there's a lot of kind of references in Nottingham to Robin Hood because he's such an iconic, famous character. I mean, you've got a road through Nottingham called Maid Marian Way, and that was meant to be Robin Hood's. Maid Marian was a lady who was Robin's significant other. And then, of course, you've got statues of Robin Hood, lots of references. So Nottingham I was born in Nottingham, so I've definitely been. But it kind of uses a lot of references to Robin Hood for tourism, I suppose, as well. But Nottingham Castle is there as well. One thing we would say is when it started out, this story has evolved. It has changed. New characters have been added. Things have changed. And it is effectively what we call a folk tale. So this is a story that a folk tale is another piece of vocabulary. It's a story that parents have passed on to their children through speech. It's a story told through speech. So what else do we know about the folk tale?
Well, I mean, obviously, Robin Hood, he had a grudge against people. One story is that he went off to fight in the Crusades, I believe, and he came
Yep.
back and found that his land had been taken. And so that made him a little bit angry, and because it had been taken unfairly. Therefore, he wanted to get revenge by getting the land back and then helping other people who'd been in a similar situation. That's one sort of story, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are variations, of course, but
There's a lot of variations. That's probably the one the other one I know. So the king at the time was King Richard, also known as Richard the Lionheart, and he went off to fight in the Crusades. So I've heard that Robin went with him, and also that Robin stayed at home. So basically, when Richard went to fight the Crusades, and we can talk about Richard the First, Richard the Lionheart, in another lesson because he's a fascinating character who was a real character from history, a real king. But King John took over. So it was during the reign. A reign, as we say here, is a noun, and it's the period of time when a king or queen rules a country. So it was the reign of Richard the First, but King John took over and ruled England, and he was not a popular king. Fundamentally, King John was hated by the population. This is this idea that Robin was defending, upholding the rights of the poor to kind of fight King John. I mean, this guy, whoever he was, Robin Hood, and we can talk about this as well. There's a wonderful quote from Wikipedia which says at least 8 plausible, which means possible, origins to the story have been mooted by historians and folklorists, including suggestions that Robin Hood was a stock alias. Stock means general. Alias used by or in reference to bandits. And a couple of good words there. Moot means to suggest something for discussion, and alias is a false name, especially one used by a criminal. So this is my kind of thing. I think that Robin wasn't particularly maybe one person, but he was kind of a sort of a figure, that a name that people took on, an alias that people took on, as several bandits said, "I'm Robin Hood," a bit like "I'm Spartacus," this kind of thing. Do you think that's possible?
That sounds quite possible, doesn't it? Yes, it's an all-encompassing name. Basically, another word for a bandit almost. You are a Robin Hood, meaning you do this kind of this sort of work. Yeah, so that's possible, I suppose. Yeah, I'm thinking more. It's just because it's just a good, as we said before. It's folklore. It's a good folk tale, and maybe obviously a long time ago in medieval times, we didn't have mobile phones, TVs, those sort of things to get stories. So this is just a story that was an interesting, fun story to pass on and to tell.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I think that this is a story that's changed because it's been by word of mouth, because it's been a folk tale. But one thing for sure, he is a legendary character, whether he is real or not. He is legendary, and
Mm,
that means he's basically very famous and admired or spoken about.
mm,
So this is something, and I find it really fascinating. And some people say he was an assassin, which meant he killed people, and others
mm,
said that he would steal the money and give to the poor. Another said he would sort of ransom. He would ask for ransoms for people. A ransom is another piece of vocabulary, and it's basically a large amount of money demanded in exchange for someone who has been taken prisoner. So he would take people prisoner and then
mm,
demand money to release them. Kidnappers
mm.
often do this as well. I mean, but this is the thing. I mean, what are the key things that we know, whether he was real or not? What are the key things that are commonly associated? We got the bow and arrow. What else would you think when you thought of Robin Hood?
We know that he didn't work alone. Of course, he had help. He didn't do all this work on his own. So he had a band of outlaws. A band is a group of people, isn't it?
Yeah,
A band of outlaws. What they were called were his merry men.
the Merry Men
Why were they
and
merry?
Maid Marian.
And Maid
Mer-
Marian, of course.
it's a weird word, isn't it? Merry, because merry is an old, sort of older word to mean happy. Do you think these guys were happy living in the forest and stealing from people? I don't
Hmm,
know.
I don't know. Living out in the
Maybe it's
forest
an
must have been
older meaning.
cold and dirty. You're always watching your back in case somebody's going to catch you. So not many reasons to be happy or merry, but maybe they were
No,
just
not really.
just high on life.
And there was of course other characters as well. So we talk about Robin Hood as that kind of
Mm.
principal hero, but he had Maid Marian, who was like a virtuous kind of innocent woman, hence the name Maid or Maiden, which
Yes,
had this kind of quality of being a virgin, of being innocent and pure.
that was his love
And she
interest.
came,
Yes.
yes, the main love interest, um, Maid Marian. Then you had Friar Tuck. From what I understand, he was added to the legends later on. So I wonder if that was to kind of give it a bit more integrity, to give the stories a bit more
Mm.
integrity. Because if it's just about a guy stealing money from people and giving it to other people, it doesn't sound too virtuous. But as soon as you add a kind
Mm.
of religious figure in there, well, wow, that adds a kind of nobility to this kind of story as well. You
Yeah.
had Little John as well, who's meant to be his best friend, and Little John was meant to be a massive man, a really big man, which was an ironic. But I think his surname may have
Ironic.
been Little or something. But yeah, and
Yes.
and Will Scarlet.
Ah, yes. Will Scarlet. That's yes.
Did,
What
did
was
he
his
play?
background?
Not entirely sure, but I know one of them used to play a kind of musical instrument, like a lute.
Hmm.
So I wonder if it was Will Scarlet. I think
Mm.
there were a pair of brothers as well. So the thing is, there are so many names mentioned in it. You almost wonder whether or not there is something real about it. That's the thing as well. I
Mm.
think there is definitely an origin for this to be real. I
Mm.
think there is a reference. Whether or not it was a guy, I think there's definitely something there that maybe Robin died at some point, the main person died, and then all the rest of them started to call themselves Robin Hood or something like this. But for me, that's where my kind of, I mean, it's hard to know, isn't it? It's hard to know
Mm.
what really happened, whether this guy did exist, didn't exist, went to the Crusades, didn't go to the Crusades, married Maid Marian, didn't marry Maid Marian, knew these people, whether it was one person or many people. But this is why it's so mooted, I suppose,
Yes.
by
Yeah. But,
historians.
the fact we're still talking about it now, it's incredible, isn't it? Hundreds of years on, we're still talking about this character or maybe
Yeah,
real person, and the story. And of course, it's been changed and adapted, and there's been film versions and stage versions.
yeah,
And even at Christmas time, when you go and see a Christmas pantomime, uh, Robin Hood is often the story, isn't it?
yeah. Pantomime is a popular Christmas form of. We need to talk about pantomime in a
Mm.
future podcast, but it's a popular kind of form of theatre that British culture seems to like. And I think originally it came from uh, France. And it's been it's very welcomed here and very loved. It's a tradition. You love a pantomime, don't you? As far as I know.
Oh no, I don't.
Oh,
See
yes,
what I
you
did there?
do. I did. I did. For anybody that doesn't understand that, within pantomime, there is this back and forth, isn't there, between the two characters? Oh, yes, he is. Oh, no, he isn't. This kind of thing. So very, very good. Very clever.
Lots
But
of
yeah,
audience participation. Yeah.
yes, yes. And and then I think sometimes as well he gets called rather than King John, he gets called Prince John as well. By the way, that's another thing as well I forgot to mention. So
Mhm.
they don't elevate him to the status of king in some stories as
Mm.
well. But the thing is as well, you're right. There's been so many film adaptations, and I think for me, I love there's the classics like with Kevin Costner, Errol Flynn, going back even further. Lots of people have played this character. Which is your favorite film? Do you have a favorite film with him in? With the
Well,
character?
I guess I do remember the big Hollywood version in the 1990s, I think it was, with Kevin Costner,
Yeah.
because it was a big, no budget spared kind of epic film. And of course, a song came out of it, didn't it? That was number one in the music charts for
For about
months and
17
months,
years.
sang by
Everything I do
Thank
it for
You, I
you
Did It For You.
by
Yeah,
Brian Adams.
that was it. That was it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can still hear it in my head. I'm not going to sing it because I can still hear it and I'll never get it out. And there was that famous bit where he fires an arrow and then the camera follows the arrow or something and then another arrow splits through. There's something about that.
Yeah.
That's so I
Yeah.
can remember there's a lot of things in that. But of course, one of my favorites growing up, being from Nottingham and hearing all these stories. You can even go to the kind of different experiences to learn more about things, and you can learn more about the history. But he's the figure of Robin Hood was on buses, and he was the emblem. He's so iconic. There's a statue in just in front of Nottingham Castle with Robin with a bow and arrow, and people kept stealing the arrows. Sadly, that's true.
Mm.
And you can go so much connected with that. But growing up, I loved the Disney version. If you've ever seen that,
Oh, is it the cartoon version?
yeah, the
Oh,
animated
with
version.
the animated version. Was there a fox in it or something?
Robin was a fox. Maid
Fox, yeah.
Marian was a fox. Little John was a bear. I think the sheriff was a wolf,
Right.
and King John or Prince John was a lion, like
Mhm.
an old lion, like a grumpy lion. It's a brilliant. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think that's from my memory.
Yeah.
And there was a song, and I still remember that. Uh, Little John and Robin Hood are walking through the
Ah,
forest, and I remember that. And there was that. Oh my goodness, it's coming back. There was a cockerel. I think it was a cockerel. He used to play the lute to sing, and it was the first time I remember this. He used the word hitched. He used the word hitched. Maid Marian and Robin Hood have got hitched. And it was this kind of thing. And I remember asking my mum what get hitched mean, which is an informal slang version to say get married. Okay, it's just
that's
coming
right.
back. I'm going to watch that version. You watch
I
your
have to
Kevin
say,
Costner.
Roy, that really isn't a real story. That one, okay? That talking fox is definitely
Well,
fictional.
there were no foxes in Robin. Robin wasn't a fox. Well, he was in the Disney version, and if we're
Yeah, yeah,
anything's to be known, it's possibly as real as the rest of the versions of the story. But
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
growing up
But
for me, it was something that was so important to the identity of Nottingham. I mean, I grew
mm,
up in
mm,
Derbyshire, but I was born in Nottingham, and even to the point where people say, "Oh, where are you from?" Nottingham, where Robin Hood is from. It's like
mm,
the kind of first thing you mention about Nottingham. And
yeah,
there's a lot going on in Nottingham. I'd love to talk about it with you, about the city.
another time.
Um, but yeah, for
But I
another
think
time indeed.
I think even in the whole of Britain, I think it's such a famous story, Robin Hood, and I think it's because we like a story that has a kind of rogue in it, somebody who's a little bit bad,
Yeah.
not completely bad. They mean well, but they're a bit of a
The,
baddie. Not somebody who kind of always follows the rules and does the right thing. Somebody who's a little
an
bit
anti-hero, I would say. An
scrupulous,
anti-hero.
anti-hero. Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
an anti-hero. A little bit of a, kind of, yeah, absolutely. I think this is, and we like the underdog. This is a British cultural thing.
mm,
We really like the underdog. This idea of somebody who's fighting against impossible odds to win. But we want them to win because we love the kind of the smaller fighter, the smaller group that could come on, let's do it. And I think this is
yeah.
really an important part of British culture. So, and
Mm,
that's something I'd say. If you are interested, by the way, in learning more about British culture, we've got a brand new course out called "What the British Say versus What We Actually Mean." There's a link down there where you can learn far more about it. But in this lesson, we've learned some really good vocabulary. We've learned reign, legendary, folktale, outlaw. We've learned archer, ambush, ransom, medieval times, moot, and alias. And we've also learned a lot of vocabulary along the way. So, final thoughts. Oh gosh, I sound like Jerry Springer. Final thoughts. What do you think? Real or not
Well,
real?
still don't think he's actually a real person or was a real person. But as you did suggest, though, there were people that had that character. Probably were out there
Yeah.
trying to do good by stealing from the rich or taking something from the rich to give to the poor to try and get some kind of equality going.
Yeah. And my final point would be, I hope he was. I hope he was real. Because I think he's a fantastic part of British history, and I'm hopeful. But there's so many things around him that are real, and we've got so much more to talk about Nottingham in
I,
another lesson.
I just hope he was a
Um,
fox. That's my thing.
Fox would be great, wouldn't he? That'd be great. That'd be real. But on that note, thank you so much for joining me today, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're
And
welcome.
yeah, great vocabulary. I'll see you in the next podcast. Have a great one.
Will do. Cheers. Bye.